Hello, everybody, and welcome. This is Lessons for Full Spectrum Humans, and I'm just squinting to see what day it is, September 19th of 2018. This is lesson 14 of the 20-part series, and last week I diverged strongly from my lesson plan and the recorded lessons. So now you could think of it like timeline diverging. I'm just like timeline diverging, splitting apart, and then joining back together. So we are now rejoining the intended trajectory of the class. Level 1, the presentation is going to be all about ascension, with great clarity being placed on making a distinction between, over the past 5 years since I recorded the lessons on Teachable, there have been a lot of people that have used that word and used it in many different ways. So I have to start off by making a distinction. Like, I'm not a New Age teacher, and I'm not a part of the New Age community, and my work has never really been promoted by them. And there's a lot of psyops that are going on in the New Age community, because a lot of people are hearing synthetic telepathy and presuming falsely, erroneously, that it's actually coming from a true spiritual master. So ascension, what I'm talking about today, is really going to clarify, like, who's been talking to these people, like, through their little microphone speakers or whatever. And what do I mean when I talk about ascension? Because I have a painting that is called Ascension 2012, and I assure you that it has, first of all, so I'm not making fun of Christians or anything like that, and I wear a cross myself, and I always make this distinction, but I am not a biblical literalist, and my flavor of Christianity is not affiliated with any earthly religion or dogma or anything like that. So all of that being said, yeah, like, I'm not talking about the Christian rapture, because I think I've also said in other recordings, it's actually a very beautiful image. If you take it as a poetic image, the idea, at the end of the New Testament of, the righteous people floating upward to the sky, and like, it's kind of a beautiful poetic image. But it's been taken literally to our great detriment. So here are the problems that I have with the end of the New Testament or the book of Revelation. That it presumes the end of the world is necessary in order to enter into some kind of golden age. It presumes that there must be, and these are profound, programs or presumptions that go into each one of us, that even if you're not a practicing Christian, there's that underlying presumption. The idea that, like, everybody has to die in order to go to heaven, or there has to be some kind of a cleansing, or there has to be some kind of a Ragnarok or something like that. So I am making a very clear distinction. When I talk about ascension, that's not what I'm talking about. Because if you've been in this class for any amount of time, or if you're new, like, I'm trying to also make it accessible to people that are just tuning in for this particular video, you know that I hold up this sculpture all the time, and this is a depiction of the time field. So we're talking about timelines, possibilities, and probabilities. And I'll draw this out too, and this is recap for anyone who's been in the class already, that there's the central core timeline where I'm placing my little pointer that goes up the center of this sculpture. And it's actually what makes that dimpling effect. Like, why is this not just a flat, fabric of space, time, and consciousness? Because there's actually like an arrow or like an infinitely heavy object that is stretching that fabric, that is making that happen. And that timeline is our inevitability timeline, is a good way of saying it. So, okay, perhaps I should go into the drawing section of this presentation in order to go further. And it's familiar for anyone who's already been in the class, but I just need to go over this again. So, okay, all the time I draw this little, oh, and let me also make my face bigger so that you can see me better in the thumbnail. All right, cool. All the time I draw this little shorthand, which is equivalent to the lower quadrant of this sculpture. So I'm holding that up to the camera so that you can see it. So you now know that what I just drew is a simplified shorthand, and it's a cross section. And I make this clear every time. Timelines actually wrap around this in a spiral journey like this. But in order to just have a conversation here today, I show it, we'll change colors also so you can see it a little bit more easily. I show it as if the timelines start out down here, that's like year 0 where you are born, and then they move upward just in straight lines like lollipops like that. So we're understanding, it's just like when scientists draw a diagram of the atom. It's not to scale, it's not true to life. This is a diagram just so that we can, even be talking about these things, and even have a way to, like, get a handle on talking about these challenging concepts. Okay, so this is recap for anyone. This is the path of least likelihood. And I always make it end in a little infinity symbol up there. And that's the only one of any of these timelines that is able to make it through this little tiny aperture. And I draw it in a very exaggerated way when I draw this diagram, but you understand with your mind and with your perception that it's so, so, so tiny that in this entire bundle of millions and billions of timelines or possibilities, there's only one skinny little, like a tiny little thread that can get through that very, very narrow opening. And all of our experiences here in terms of having to circulate through the possibility is dying and returning back, dying and returning back. We're talking about like reincarnation within one lifespan, not even across many multiple generations, but within your one corporeal existence in this body, that it takes so many tries, just like I've used the example of playing on the piano keyboard. Hey, is this the right note? No, 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 onward, onward, more, try again, try again, try again, try again. Finally getting the right note. So when we get the right note, then that is analogous to becoming in alignment with that ideal timeline that is at the center of that sculpture and that I'm now highlighting in red over here. This is your ideal timeline. And when I say that, it is the version of you that is the real you, that has all the personality characteristics that are who you really are. So all of these other timelines that I'm highlighting in red, the peripheral timelines, those include aspects of self or characteristics that are slightly distorted or massively distorted. Like the stuff that's way out here, the far outliers, like you're a maniac, you're a psychopath. Yeah, each one of us has the potential to be, you know, like dogs. Like dogs are put into dog fighting, you know, arenas, and they have to fight to the death, and like they become twisted, monstrous versions of who they really are inside. And humans experience that too. Or just people who are a wreck, like a shell of their potential. They might be involved in profound substance abuse or some other form of self-destruction or degradation. That's what we also find out here on the periphery. Beings that are so far away from their true self that they are not acting like their true self. They're not exhibiting those true behavior characteristics. And I'm also going to go back to my face, and we'll get back to this image in a little bit. I'm also talking about in terms of the refinement. So you can think about this as literally, you know, this is a spinning wheel of energy that is a refinery, you know, just like a centrifuge. And what it's doing is focusing your vision of reality from the outside, squinty, not too clear image to get to the very, 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 very focused in version of who you really are. So I'd say that this refinement process is very much like the way of writing a term paper when word processors were first invented, you know, or since they have been invented up to this point. So I'm trying to say not when typewriters or longhand was the way of writing a term paper, but since the invention of word processing. How do you write a term paper? Like you start off like, just write the basic thing. Don't worry if it's spelled correctly. Don't worry if everything is put in a format that makes sense. Don't worry about the organization. Just kind of like vomit everything onto the page. Just do it. Just write it out, write it out, write it out. And then you press save. And you have just saved your first draft. And if I'm saying things that sound very obvious, forgive me, I'm getting somewhere with all this. And then of course you go back and you fix the spelling mistakes, and then you press save and you have your second draft. And then you go back and you make more and more and more refinements. And those refinements get to be more and more sophisticated because you fixed all the gross mistakes, you fixed all the other stuff, and then you're really getting to, is this paper saying what I really wanted to say? Does it contain all the information? Does it present that information in a coherent way? Does it engage the reader? Is it doing what I want it to do in terms of explaining information? And then when you've done all of that and you like what is written, you press save and you hand your paper in to your professor. That's what we are doing in terms of our refinement of consciousness and returning to the source. And when I say the source, I'm not affiliated with any kind of Law of One, CIA channeled PSYOPs material. I'm literally using that word in order to mean where we came from, and it's also the destination because it's where we're going, because we are moving in a giant unbroken loop. And we're supposed to be this unbroken circuit of consciousness where there's the divine that emanates us we coalesce into matter while we maintain our connection to the divine, have a bunch of experiences as the divine in the body. Like, that's the most amazing thing. We got God sitting on the couch eating potato chips, not realizing that God is God, and watching TV and drinking beer and being anesthetized because God is cut off from God's self. That there's all of this false presumption here in the embodied world that people think that they're nothing. They think that they're so disposable, that they're unworthy, that they're stupid, that they're whatever, lowly worms. And there's a lot of religious stuff that teaches that, a lot of cultural stuff that teaches that. And there's huge socioeconomic gaps where many people are treated like subhumans. They're treated like disposable objects. So I understand why that's going on. All of this effrontery against God. That's one of the things that surprised and horrified me when I came here as Aurora into this body. I was shocked by how badly God was treated around here. Like, that's just not the way it's supposed to be. So yes, each one of us, that's what I'm trying to say. So and blah, 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 I'm jumping around a lot. In the journey of ascension, when you reach that penultimate moment, get to my whiteboard. When you reach that penultimate moment, so you are traveling upward from this starting point, going here, going here, going here, going here, going here. And look, you have reached the penultimate moment. You're making it through the wormhole. I've called that in a couple of lessons ago, the I am God moment, or like you're creating the I am God circuit, because you came from that big red dot and you circulated out into reality. And then you managed to get all the way back. That's the I am God circuit. And it is also analogous to what happens when you have one neuron over here. This is a very roughly drawn neuron, so please bear with me. And then another neuron lollipop over here. And there's the synaptic gap, or the cleft between neurons, where I'm making the red squiggle. That in order for a nerve impulse to successfully travel along the neurons, get nerve impulse. Oops, I'm at the end of what I can do. What do I do now? I, as a nerve impulse, have to somehow jump across this synaptic gap and make it to the next nerve and then continue on my journey. And that jump across, boom, that jump across is analogous to this. This is jumping across. This is making it across the synaptic gap in terms of higher dimensional neurological structure. And so, and I'm going to get into the connectedness of life too. Let me just drink a little bit of water. The connectedness of our many lives, but I want to really make it clear, like, what is the experience? What am I talking about when I say ascension? What is the experience of ascension like? So when I'm talking about ascension, so wait, stop, press pause on me. So Lou is saying the Atlians, I think you mean Atlanteans, were already centered consciously. They were not askew. Yes, thank you, Salu. So the pre-antediluvian culture, the pre-flood culture on this planet here was divine. It was perfect. It was sophisticated. Everybody had their chakras like this. And of course, this is a representation of one of your energy centers. We have many of them. They all stack up together. If you're in this class, I've shown you the pictures a million times. So I'm just holding up a simplified version of it. They all had everything in perfect alignment. Nothing was askew and nothing wibble wobbled. So that means that nobody died. And this is analogous to the time mythologically, like if we look at the myths of ancient Egypt, they talk about the time of the immortals. This is what they're referring to, a time before death was invented. And then according to the Egyptian mythology, Set, who was red colored and came from Mars, Satan, like the church lady, Satan. Yes, Set came from Mars and killed Osiris. And Osiris was the culture of immortality, and then distributed the body parts all over the world. This is like the distribution of those key elements of understanding to the various different cultures that would keep those elements alive. So some of it went to the Maya, some of it went to the ancient Egyptians, some of it went to the Tibetan culture and like the culture in the Far East. Like everybody had one puzzle piece, no one had the whole puzzle. So all of this to say, in the time of Atlantis, nobody died, everybody ascended. What does that mean? That means in order to be born and coalesce into matter, you emerge or emanate from the central convergence point, the source, the zeroth dimension, the place that everything is. Come out, circulate into reality, and then still connected to God or the divine or the source, travel up that central core timeline. And that's what life was like. I tell you, I say this about my dog, right? That I adopted her. She was a rescue. She felt anxious or concerned about life because she had had a lot of ups and downs. Tell her every day, life's a fun adventure. And after about a year of saying that, she now is happy to go on walks and meet people and do stuff because life is a fun adventure since, she got adopted by me. With the idea of ascension, like when you live in a body and your body is healthy and fit and you're connected to the divine and you can see the future, I mean, you can clearly avoid any obstacles or pitfalls or horrible accidents and move towards all of your desired goals and experiences, life becomes a fun adventure. So this is what I'm trying to say. I'm trying to treat everyone here on Earth, the traumatized planet, kind of the same way that I've interacted with very lovingly my dog, who was, traumatized by her experiences in life. And everybody carries some amount of this social and cultural trauma. This is a moment, this is a time of healing. What we've been experiencing pretty much since 2001 on this planet has been a time of healing, even though it's also been a time of profound suffering and iniquity. I thought it would be like, oh, everything will be done by 2003 and we'll all be like in a complete utopian, wonderful world. And clearly that did not happen on my expected time schedule. This has been a very, very long, slow, like peeling off the Band-Aid in a very, very slow way. But I want to make it clear to everyone, this has been a time of healing and rectification where everyone has had a chance to go from these slanted timelines to a timeline that is more in alignment with your true self and with your true characteristics of who you really are. So life is supposed to be a fun adventure. Life is not supposed to be either a grim death march, with barbed wire lining both sides of the narrow pathway that you're on. And life is also not supposed to be something where you're flying blind, where you can't see what's going to happen. And I say this all the time. If I said to someone, hey, is it normal for you to be able to see the future? Most people around here, they would say, no, Aurora, that is not normal. Like being able to, see the future or, being like a prophet or an oracle or something, that's not normal. That's so special. It's so rare that we have special people that do that and we pay them a lot of money to do it. Like that's not just for everyone. And I'm trying to say it's supposed to be for everyone because you feel a lot less concern and anxiety when you can actually see where you're going. And if you don't like where you're going, then you get to change. I'm right now turning the steering wheel of my chakras into a new timeline, into a new direction. So if you're like, oh, I don't like the imminent death I see up ahead, I will simply steer in a different direction. Then life becomes a fun adventure, as opposed to, an out of control, whatever, ping pong ball and constantly falling off the road of what existence that you're supposed to be. So before death was invented in the sophisticated antediluvian worldwide culture known as Atlantis, what happened? So first of all, nobody ever died. No one ever saw a skeleton unclothed with flesh. Think about that. Here, that is a very normal thing. Like you got them in a medical office or catacombs. You see skeletons, you know what they look like. They'd never seen a skeleton because all of the skeletons were always clothed with flesh and animated by consciousness. There were never any decomposing bodies, and that means not only of humans, but of any organism. Death did not have to exist because humans at that time ate nothing but pure sunlight. And we are very, very familiar with the idea like, oh, well, here's my wonderful green juice with some of the wonderful cannabis out of my garden. Plant leaves had to die in order for me to drink this wonderful juice here. And there's no way of getting around that. And we can get into all sorts of philosophical discussions about nervous systems and who can feel pain and everything like that. But the basic truth of reality is that in our present format, in these bodies, the way that they are created right now, in order to sustain life, something else has to die. And this has been erroneously attributed, like it wasn't created this way by the great composer, the great creator. These are in our distorted bodies. This is the truth of reality. I had to come up against that when I first came here as Aurora because I was trying to eat nothing but pure sunlight for like the first couple of weeks. And now you can laugh at me, ah ha ha, like, oh my dear, how silly of you to think that. But yeah, that's what I really thought. Just like, I thought, oh, this is what you do around here. And I did not understand. You actually have to eat food and drink juice and other stuff like that to sustain your body. So then once I learned that, then I was like, oh, this is this type of place and this is what's going on here. So we all need to accept that. And so what I do is I do sun gazing directly connecting to the sun with my inner eye, with my inner aperture, in order to feed my light body. And I also eat plants and animals and fruits and vegetables and nuts in order to feed my physicality. So I'm kind of like one of those cars that can run on electric power, but you can also put gasoline in it, and it can run on both systems. But I'm trying to tell you, our bodies in the original design were not meant to be internal combustion like steam engines. Like, food goes in here and then it gets puffed by the engine of my body and then turns into kinetic energy that I can use in order to do stuff like run around. That's not the way our bodies were supposed to run. So we've been repurposed in order to survive this level of degradation, but that's not what we were supposed to do. So once our bodies got changed, we also had to have plants and animals changed so that we could consume all of these things. I'm trying to say that was the trauma. That was the trauma that we are now all overcoming, the trauma of the invention of death. So when planetary invaders came to this body, came to this world, they wibble wobbled, they transformed all of the organisms on our planet in order to function differently. So that was the invention of death. So before the invention of death, you didn't have to eat food in order to be healthy and well maintained. No one ever died. What happens was you lived life in the complete health and comfort of a wonderful body. Like, imagine being Olympic athlete or like yoga master or gymnast for hundreds or thousands of years. You can be healthy and fit and have perfectly clear vision and never need glasses and no tooth decay, because you don't use your precious, beautiful teeth, crystalline structures for mashing up food. Like, it's a completely different way of living, and also being able to see the future. So a body in complete health and alignment, no disease, not only no death, nothing that feels uncomfortable in your body. Wow, life would be a fun adventure. So I'm trying to rekindle that idea that life can be a fun adventure, and it's not supposed to be a grim death march, and it's not supposed to be filled with disease or decrepitude as you move through time. And you're supposed to be able to be healthy and fit and live in a body for as long as you want to, until you get bored. You're like, well, I've played all the songs I need to play, and I've done all the things I want to do, met all the people I want to meet, and done all the whatevers, and now I'm ready to transcend this level of reality. That would be the moment of ascension in the time of Atlantis, before anyone had ever experienced death. It's kind of like saying, like, I've watched every movie and I've read every book, and I've done everything that can be done. And it's like you've reached your level of cultivation. Like, if you're in a womb gestating, you're like, I am now ready to be born. But clearly our experience of ascension is different, because back then you didn't have to go through all of the wrong notes until you finally got to the right note that you actually want to be on. We've been doing all this circulating around, hitting the membrane of death and being recirculated back in, and having to do this all the time. And that, first of all, is like an energy generating apparatus that is siphoning off energy that goes to the membrane of death. I will draw this out now. There is not supposed to be energy on the membrane of death. It is supposed to be a place of pure entropy. What do I mean by entropy? Entropy is coldness. Entropy is lack of motion. If energy is heat and motion and molecules are doing stuff, then this area here, I'll make it dark green, in dark green is the membrane of death that is supposed to be a place that is cold. There's supposed to be entropy there. There's supposed to be nothingness there. There's not supposed to be consciousness here. All the consciousness is supposed to be here on this central core timeline. So the idea that death was invented and that energy and consciousness began to be siphoned off of this structure onto the membrane of death was a subversion of the original design, and is not what is supposed to be happening. And when you do that, circulating around and around and around, you can see it it looks like a dynamo. It looks like something that generates energy. That is exactly what has been happening. So this is intentional degradation of your entire body system, so that you will bleed off your energy that goes into this larger system that is a malevolent system that is technological based, and it contravenes OS love, the operating system known as love. It contravenes everything that is like about this infinity, this point of zeroth dimension. Because I'm always saying you only need your birthday suit. You do not need anything auxiliary to what you were born with in order to have this experience of personal refinement and ascension. Hold on a second. So the membrane of death is not supposed to have any consciousness occupying it there, but consciousness has been occupying the membrane of death for a very, very long time. death was not just invented on this planet, it was invented in many, many other places too. So death has been a cosmos-wide pervasive problem. It's not just like fix it here, that, then everything place else is fine. But what we're doing in fixing it here, having this planetary ascension, then radiates outward. Like if this is Earth and we are like building this little antidote, what we then do is radiate all of that antidote outward to all these other physical locations in space and also locations in the past and the future. So this is very worthy work. It's kind of like figuring out how do you fix what is going on here and then applying that to what is happening in the entire cosmos. They take the antibodies or the antidote and apply it to the disease that is all out there. So everyone ascended in Atlantis. Nobody ever hit the membrane of death. Now there's a different situation where everybody thinks that hitting the membrane of death is normal, and almost nobody ascends or knows about the ascension timeline. So I'm trying to tell everybody, death is not inevitable. Here, the erroneous teaching is death is inevitable. Everybody must die. You need to die because there's not enough room for you. You need to eat other things in order to stay alive. It's pretty much like that's the expectation that is programmed in socially, culturally, and religiously. That's my problem with the book of Revelation, that it basically says you need to die in order to go to heaven. And I'm trying to say to everyone, no, you don't have to die in order to go to heaven. It's like saying you have to drive off the road in order to stay on the road. In order to stay on the road, you stay on the road. You do not hit the membrane of death. So you are not obliged to play every wrong note before you play the right note. That's a big one. Because a lot of people think like, oh, like I'm just going to do this 10,000 more times and then inevitably I'll find myself aligned with this central core timeline. You don't have to do that. In fact, that's what this planetary moment is all about. That even if you have been askew like this, that you can right yourself and begin traveling in a different direction, in a new and different direction. And one of the tools that allows you to do that is this shape called the flying rainbow lasagna, because our flight through time, I'll go back to my face. Our flight through time is determined by the dance movements of our DNA. That's a big one that science hasn't touched with the 10-foot pole. You got individual time cars of reality, and you are jumping your consciousness from time car to time car, and what makes you jump from moment to moment? Like it is now 2:34. We were just in the moment 2:33. How did we jump our consciousness from the body of 2:33 into the body of 2:34? We didn't sit there and be like, okay, guys, ready, jump. Like we didn't have to do that. It flowed naturally. It is part of our experience of moving through time, just like a fish swims in a river. So what made us do that jump flowing naturally from moment to moment? It is the dance of our DNA. Your DNA doesn't just tell you what your face is shaped like. Your DNA determines which timeline you're experiencing in reality. Your DNA determines, are you going up that central core timeline or are you going askew? So we've had disarranged DNA that made our individual bodies go askew and made us experience the membrane of death, and you can flying rainbow lasagna and do a new dance with your DNA. Meaning you don't have to hit the membrane of death anymore. Meaning even if you are at this angle, you're over here going like this, you're gonna hit the membrane of death. No, don't go in that direction. You can all of a sudden do the flying rainbow lasagna dance, and that is like changing the steering wheel of your car so that now you're going in the right direction. So first of all, okay, and I'll get to questions. Our planet is undergoing a planetary ascension. And this relates absolutely to the events of Atlantis, because that was a degradation not just of humanity, not just little you and me, it was a degradation of the entire planet. It was a planetary invasion. The planet herself, and I keep pointing to that little painting over there, is a profound creative force. Just like a wonderful musician or a wonderful artist, like full of creative energy. And we, as the organisms on the planet, are her art projects. And if you've ever seen like a beautiful sunset, or, the way that some of these striated rocks are made, like there's an incredible amount of artistry that is expressed in the natural, world of organisms and, apertures on this planet. It's a very, very beautiful place. The planet herself makes it very beautiful. And that creative energy has been hijacked and siphoned off, just like your individual energy got hijacked and siphoned off, because the planet and her trajectory, like the planet has a timeline set like this, has a bundle of possibilities like this, and the planet's trajectory got pulled off course into death. So there's all these things about humans have been programmed with a religious expectation of the end of the world, where your body's going to die, but then you're going to magically get resurrected, and where the planet's going to die. That's a big thing. The idea of like meteorites or giant catastrophe or whatever it is, something that's going to come, like a planetary body, trial by fire. I'm not believing in any of these things. I'm giving you examples of things that I don't believe in. Massive floods, and here's the big one that most people are really afraid of. Pole shift. So don't be afraid of pole shift. But I understand that that is part of the PTSD vestigial traces from Atlantis, because what happened back then was pole shift. Here's why pole shift happened in Atlantis. The bad, horrible beings that invaded the human genome, and they basically destabilized the entire planet. What they wanted to do is build a fake freaking Merkaba here. They built a fake one on Mars and it went horribly awry. And they built a fake one on the planet that they destroyed between Mars and Jupiter that's now the asteroid belt, and it went horribly awry. And they did something bad on Venus too. And they're like, we're going to go to Earth and we're going to build a fake Merkaba there too. And so they created, giant crystalline structures that are like technologically based, not naturally based, in order to try to harness the creative energy of the planet for bad music purposes. I will now make ugly music. Cover your ears for this type of music. Oh, we are making a fake Merkaba and some very ugly music. They farted up the joint. They made horrible, horrible music. So the spinning of our DNA, the dance of our DNA, literally stabilizes our planet as our planet moves through time, space, and consciousness. I'll say that again. Your DNA, not only does it not just tell you what the shape of your face is, it also makes you bounce through time from the body of 234 to the body of 238. And it's also connected to the stable transit of the planet in her orbit through interstellar space, and also across, like the abstraction of the time field. That your little DNA dance that is going on actually affects the planet on that level. So if you degrade the human DNA dance, it makes the whole planet go caca cuckoo. And that is what happened. That there was a destabilization of Earth's magnetic field, which by BTW looks exactly like this. Earth's magnetosphere is shaped exactly like this. I had a lovely message from someone who said to me that they were watching something that I think was like a satellite feed or something. It was something that showed Earth's magnetosphere and how it's affected by the solar wind. They're like, Aurora, and it looked exactly like your sculptures. I'm like, yes, you're paying attention. It looks exactly like this. So the magnetosphere is tied to bundles of timelines and possibilities and probabilities. And this is, what we're talking about here. The planet is ascending. The planet is rectifying in this generation right now. I just need to drink more juice or something. Hold on a sec. The planet is rectifying what happened, 10 or 20,000 years ago. The planet was on a trajectory of being her true self, creating, or think about this, plants and animals that need to have defense mechanisms because they don't want to be eaten. That's not actually natural. That's not actually what we're, just like we, had to repurpose our teeth and be like, now my beautiful crystal tuner teeth are made for mashing up plant parts to put into my tummy for my microbes to digest. That's not how it's supposed to be. In exactly the same way, plants and animals had to develop or repurpose themselves into having defense mechanisms, where if you're not worried about something eating you or eating your seeds or whatever, you don't have to grow all these thorns. You don't have to grow lectins, which are plant anti-nutrients. You don't have to worry that some animal's going to come along and eat all of your seeds because they're not looking for nourishment. You get all your nourishment directly from the stars. So plants and animals, everything had to change. If you imagine a giant guitar, all of the strings on the guitar, they turn the knobs, everything changed. The way that all organisms interact had to change, including on a microbial level, which is the tiniest that we can possibly imagine. So the rectification that is happening is planetary. So if I use myself as an example, I say, okay, I'm Aurora, I'm like a planet, and I'm going to ascend. If I'm like a planet and I'm ascending, first of all of my cells need to ascend. There's no way for my skin cells to be like, we're not gonna do the work. Like we're gonna just sit on the couch and eat potato chips. We're not gonna do inner transformation. You can't do that. You can't do that because you're part of an entirety. You're part of a whole system. So each individual human that's here on this planet, that's like, I'm not going to do the inner work. I'm going to sit on the couch eating potato chips. And it's like, you can't do that. You are part of a larger system. So if you had aspects of your being that did not change, and when I say in their let's say change their vibratory pattern in order to better integrate into the time field, then they would not be able to come along with you. That's the end of the story. None of this is based in judgment. None of this is like, I am the beard of the sky god and I smite you for being naughty. It's not that at all. All of this is about, did you transform your dance of your DNA and the music that you're emitting so that you can fit into the symphony of life that is being played by the planet that you're living on. If you can't fit in with that music, you get kicked out of the band. You cannot be there. So I said earlier in this broadcast, since 2001 or so, we've been under this level, a grace period, where there's been a lot of suffering, but there's also been the opportunity for people to write their pathways, to go from this in order to, go more like this. And that's because the planet has been ascending. And the planet is going to do this regardless of whether it is convenient for you on an individual level. Like, it's not a good day for me to ascend. Like, wait 5 years. I still have to work at my corporate job. Like, the planet doesn't do that. The planet is like, it's like a giving birth process. The contractions are happening. The water is breaking. The baby is coming down the birth canal. Like, you can't stop this. You got to respect the mama that this is happening. So I say this all the time in all my broadcasts too, because I just brought up mama, material, maternal. Material world, we're in physical, material, fleshy bodies. Maternal, meaning mother. We have been here as consciousnesses gestating in a womb of matter. That's our mama. Our mama is mama Earth, planet Earth. It is that level of mentality, that realm. So it's not just a place in space. I point to a rocky planet. That is my place in space. It's not just that. It's also the idea that we as disembodied, ephemeral consciousnesses became embodied in physical matter. And we learned all these lessons and we did our process of refinement, just like refining out gold with some kind of a centrifuge, spinning around. And when you're left with a nice chunk of gold. That's what we're doing. And then what happens? You get born. You don't just stick around in your mama's tummy for your whole life. You get born. So one of the big takeaways from explaining about what is ascension, and then I'll get into all these wonderful questions, is it ain't the end. It ain't the end. And I was saying this in the Facebook intro. I recognize that it is very unpleasant to be here. Like, we're in the socioeconomic matrix. We're under profound duress. There's all this toxicity. There's poverty. There's the struggle to just survive and maintain, food and shelter and have clean water and all of that. That is a real, real challenge here in this time and place. And mental sovereignty, like to have nothing else screwing with your mind, to be able to think your own thoughts. It ain't easy. So I understand that people are looking for the way out. Death is not the way out, because I'm telling you, you're just going to circulate back around and have to try it again. So the new age, what I take issue with in the new age community is the idea of Calgon, take me away. Ascension, take me away. So just like there's the literalist biblical Christian rapture, I'm floating upwards to be with my Lord in heaven. There is the new age version of that, which is either friendly space aliens, you get out, climb on board their plank-like metal spaceships, or being uploaded to some virtual reality fantasy land, happy land, San Junipero of Black Mirror, or some ascension process experience that basically you fly somewhere else and everything is great all of a sudden. And that is not what I'm talking about. I understand the escapism, where it comes from, but we need to squash that. That's not what this is about. It is not about trying to escape suffering, but it is about transforming the experience so that we no longer have to suffer. Yeah, because if your life is good, you don't want to have to leave. That's the whole point of telling you all about ancient Atlantis. You left when you were done. You didn't leave because you had bills to pay and you couldn't deal with your car insurance or something like that, or whatever. You didn't leave because you were profoundly addicted to substances that you used as a coping mechanism to take the edge off of the suffering of being here. No. You left because you had accomplished your mission. I did my mission. I did everything I needed to do. And then everyone around you in ancient Atlantis would celebrate your life as you were ascending. And ascending, the process of ascending, is a transformation and a metamorphosis of a physical being into a non-physical being. Not physical to non-physical, without any of the intervening decomposition, liquefaction, bugs eating you, worms crawling in and out and playing pinochle on your snout. None of that intervening experience had to happen. It was a direct translation from physical into non-physical. So, you know, you could translate from being a physical being into a non-physical being right now. If you put your physical body like in a very hot place, put it in a furnace, put it on a funeral pyre, put it on the surface of the sun, like a hot place, and you will instantaneously change state from physical to a plasma, you know, to like a superheated gas. But this is about how to do that transformation in a non-destructive way. We're not talking about destroying your body, because there's all this self-destruction. Since the time of Atlantis, everybody looks at themselves and they're like, I hate my diminished state. I want to die. I want it to be destroyed. I'm not worthy. And I'm trying to be like, no, don't be self-destructive. You're worthy and let's fix things up. Like that's, you know, my flying rainbow lasagna approach. So yeah, you're not supposed to be like, woohoo, I'm jumping onto my funeral pyre and I'm destroying myself and I hate my ego and I want to die. That's not what ascension is. Because I just got through with explaining how ascension is saving term paper, the final edited version of you that is divine and perfected. So first, big takeaway, big message to everyone, please believe that inside of each one of us, there is the potential for that perfect, you know, timeline that is the version of you or any living being that is who they're really supposed to be. And you're going to try to turn this around to like really evil people too. Be like, what about that guy? He's really evil. They're like, you know, whatever. Name the worst politician, the worst guy. You think like, does that guy have an ascension timeline? And like, technically, everybody has an ascension timeline, even though I have explained that there are pathogens that are in existence that are not supposed to be in existence. So let's say that all embodied humans, if you have a body and you're here, most people are having an internal struggle between self-destructive pathogenic aspects of self, like that aren't supposed to be in existence, and the characteristics that are who you really are. So let's say self-destructive pathogenic characteristics, that would be the tendency to like drink alcohol and be an alcoholic. You know, like this is very self-destructive. You're drinking a toxic substance and for escapism reasons. Like those personality characteristics aren't the true you. That's not who you really are. So in the refinement of being on these timelines, a person that's going through that experience is, hey, wait, over these many experiences, I learned that that is not the true me, that when I do this, that is the true me, choosing to, you know, have a different experience and not expose myself to substance abuse. So, okay, everybody has inside of themselves the potential to be an ascended master, and being an ascended master or undergoing the ascension process is inevitable. It does require a great deal of personal inner work and willpower and strength. However, it is inevitable. Please do be very cautious of anyone who's embodied in a body and who declares themselves, I am an ascended master, because when you ascend, you graduate. But it is not the end of your experience, but you graduate. You are not physical anymore. So this is pretty big. So you can talk to me, be like, Aurora, like, who are you? Who do you think you are? I like to describe myself and I say, I am ascending. I'm in the process of ascending. What allows me to be here? Like I flying rainbow lasagna, I came from a galactic direction. I did not come from the conventional direction. Why am I here? I have motivations. I'm not just here on a pleasure cruise, and I have motivations. There were things, let's say, my ego, my need to be here and share these ideas. I'm totally motivated to like share the flying rainbow lasagna. That's why I haven't just poofed off into a pile of rainbow colored smoke yet. Cause I'm like, wait, I want to like make these videos and make these songs and make these sculptures, and make these animations and teach people about all this stuff. Like that's my motivation for being here. So I, without any, I'm not holding back or whatever, like, yeah, I have an ego. I'm here. In order to be here, you have to have an ego. You have to have a set of like motivations. Like, why are you here? Why are you embodied? Why are you here? So anyone who pretends to be like, you know, a fully ascended master guru and still embodied and here, like that is not truthful. And when you ascend, your cares turn in a different direction. You are no longer focused on what's happening in the material embodiment realm, the mother's womb. You are now focused on the other realm, the realm that you go to when you exit. I'm getting to all the questions. I know I keep saying that 10 million times. When you go through the wormhole, this is the next thing I have to really make clear. You just get a totally different color. When you go through the wormhole over here, your timeline doesn't end. What happens is you open up into a new reality. Oh my goodness, guys, guess who just came on up? Come on up. Hey, Oh, a dog boss. Cheeky woke up. She decided to come to work. She's like any good boss. She takes a long nap and then comes in when she's feeling well rested. Cheeky, Joelle says she loves you. There you go. Cheeky's got her whole fan club. I want you guys to know I read out loud your comments to her so that she knows how much you love her. She's super social. Back to serious stuff here. I know we love Cheeky so much. When you exit the wormhole, that is not the end of your journey. What happens is you open up into a new vista of reality, a whole new set of timelines. That's what I have over here in this area over here. And what also happens is I have to draw this. Oh, I'm just getting a lot of kisses right now. She's giving me so many kisses. You know, I always point over here as if this is the starting point where I put that orange arrow. But when you get in alignment with that central core timeline, you begin to see that you are part of a provenance, where you came from. So if I draw, now I have to get like a different, totally different color. I'm always showing you this yellow sculpture, not in relation to all of the other things that it's connected to. Now we're going to start to understand ascension as connection to all of these other consciousnesses. Here's that cross section. And it's connected to all these other apparatuses, structures. And just imagine an infinite field of those. I do not have the time or the patience to draw them all out on this little electronic apparatus. It's really hard. So, okay, this, what I drew over here is one portion of this, what I just drew over there. So the blue timeline, here's the ascension timeline in that area of the time field. But look, that's not the only place where that line connects to. This is that orange line. It connects to here, down here. And I'll make a different color for a different life. This connects to this timeline down here. It's red. I don't know if you can see the difference between the different colors on here. And we'll do one more. And then there's another timeline over here, another timeline over here. So what happens when you go from being askew and hitting the membrane of death to righting your vehicle and being able to travel up and down that central core timeline, and you make it to this moment over here, this penultimate transcendent moment of metamorphosis, where you not only transform on a cellular level, but you have all of this energy all of a sudden flowing through you. What you begin to understand is, first of all, I am God. This is, I'm doing the little leap here, guys, the neuron leap. You leap across, you leap across, you leap across. You say, first of all, I am God. And then what also happens is, just get a different color that you can actually see. You are able to introspect and retrospect all the way down all of these timelines. If you can imagine that it's just like if you have a telescope or some kind of tube that you're looking through, and you finally get it aligned in just the right way, so that as you look down that tube, you can see, whoa, you can see different layers of reality into the far distant past. You can see, or let's say concurrent reality, what in this time and place, in this position of time, what we would define as past and future, but it becomes, you see yourself as part of the time continuum. So you are able to see, kind of like looking backwards, that is where my particle came from. All of those previous rainbow colored timelines came to this experience, then I did this, and you can also see into what is going to be experienced. I'm going to go in that direction, experience all of those rainbow colored timelines, and it's all you. It's not like, oh, there's some other guy that lived that life, and then this other guy lived that life, and then I finally became this person. It is a transformation of self-description and identity, and it has to do with unity consciousness, because all of a sudden you're not merely defining yourself as, I'm this person in this epidermis having this level of experience in the time field or in the human octave, like, you know, from this level to this level. I'm actually all of these lives, all of these reverberations. And that can even go back to microbes. I was born as a microbe several million years ago. I grew up in a log cabin. I eventually became multicellular. Like, that's how far back you can go, even to where were you when you were not living in a body on this planet? Where were you embodied? Where are you embodied concurrently? Where will you be embodied as the reverberations of your consciousness move forward through time? That is the experience of ascension. So I'm going to be really, really clear. You're moving up that central core timeline. You reach that penultimate moment. In that moment, you have the experienced realization, I am God. I am connected to the source. There's no distinction between me and the source of consciousness. You have literally returned to the source. You've completed the circuit. You recognize that you're the creator. You made all this stuff. You made all this stuff. You made this potential for stuff. You experienced the stuff. You made more stuff. And that you were all of these other individual personalities. And I say that this experience of ascending, it's like you become part of unity consciousness, but you do not lose your individuation. You can be an individuated being and still be part of a whole. So our bodies are very good examples of that. We have individuated cells, individual cells in the trillions that all work together as part of the whole. There are distinctions between types of cells. I say this all the time, like my heart cell is different than my tooth cell. You don't want tooth cells to grow in your heart. Like that would be terrible, terrible, terrible disease. You have to let each individual being be its true self. That's what it is when you become ascended, when you reach that core central version of you, you're your true self, your true characteristics, who you're really meant to be. You're playing the right notes on the beat in the symphony, and you're not, listening to anything else, not being, distorted by anything else. And you also are able to see all of the other steps on your journey that brought you to the moment of being who you are right now, and all of the steps that will happen on your journey. And then you start to see that they're all connected. This is how I am describing my experience of choosing to come here and flying rainbow lasagna, this body, like what motivated me. Because this is also, I'm motivated to be here to make, sculptures and videos and share this information. I am also highly motivated because I'm offended when I see lack of freedom. I'm offended when I see consciousness that is being enslaved and trapped and exploited, because I'm that consciousness. It's actually me. It's actually, like I've said, the same photon. We're the same photon being emitted into time and then constantly rewinding in time and embroidering the surface of the time tapestry over and over and over. When you see someone else, you're like, that's me. I'm that photon. And when I see someone who's like born with cancer, little tiny kids born with cancer, or like children that have to eat off of a garbage heap, I'm like, that is unacceptable. And what's going on this planet and what was happening to this particular, embodied person was totally unfair and totally uncool. And I'm like, no, that is not allowed to happen. That's not what's supposed to happen. So this was my response. And I teach my response to other people because everyone can be free. Everyone can be free in this generation. That's a really big takeaway. It's not like you have to transform your DNA and then have procreative sex with a partner and have infant babies and then raise them to adulthood, and then finally those characteristics will move forward, through the genetic expression of future generations. What you can experience is lateral gene transfer. Just like I talk about the little tardigrades, the woolly bears, the microscopic organisms that are super, super tough that can get desiccated, chop on up all of their DNA in that moment of desiccation, not die, get rehydrated, and either rearrange their DNA into new patterns when they get rehydrated, or get new ideas, new inspiration, new snippets. When you sample in music, you got your regular symphony going on, but then I'm just going to take a little bit of Jimi Hendrix, just take that little snippet, and then bam, I'm going to put that right into my song. That you're playing your own individual song of your DNA, but what you can do is be inspired in this generation to transform your song. So this is really big. When I'm saying look down the time tunnel when you are ascending and you see who you were, I'm not just talking about your immediate ancestors and everything like that, like your human ancestors. I'm really talking about everything, all life on this whole entire planet. Like this is the big understanding. It's a dilation of identity. When you really dilate your identity and you say, hey, wait, I'm everything that's alive and conscious. I'm the entire planet and I'm God. That's what I'm talking about when I say ascension. Okay, so what is the experience like as we're experiencing it? So let's say we're all ascending. We're all in that process of transforming the term paper, going from like, oh, some spelling mistakes and grammatical errors to more and more and more who we really are. And I am totally in solidarity. It's very, very difficult to be who you really are here if you're like, well, you know, who I really am as a musician, but, you know, like having a job pays a lot better than doing this independent music. So then it's like, how do you do what you really are supposed to do while submerged in this distortive matrix that essentially pays people to be and do what they are not really supposed to be being and doing? So it's a huge challenge. And my basic answer to that is you need to do your real work and be supported by the people that are here around you in what you're doing. And that there is a lucrative way to do whatever you need to do. So we need to support each other. If your real work is being creative, like an artist, a musician, an inventor, anything like that, we need to support each other in this and be like, well, I'm not going to buy the pop music that I hear on the radio. Instead, I'm going to download my friend's album that he did independently, put it up on Bandcamp or SoundCloud or one of those, you know, types of places. Buy from independent makers of clothing, or like support people in the work that they're actually doing. Because economy is not just made by one blade of grass. A field or a meadow or a lawn is made by many, 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 many blades of grass. So we have to have many of us that are living our authentic lives, doing the work we're actually supposed to be doing, having a vibrant economy of sharing, as opposed to what has been going on for a very long time, where people perform their own human sacrifice on themselves. When people sacrifice themselves, they don't necessarily take a knife and stab themselves, but what they do is they acquiesce to doing a job that is not who they're really supposed to be, that literally makes them go askew into the membrane of death, but along the way gives them a paycheck. Lots of people, they're like driving to their job, they're going to their cubicle job, they're like, I feel so grim, I am going to die. And it's because they're on the wrong timeline. So those personal compromises are what I'm talking about when I say they sacrifice themselves. They do a human sacrifice of themselves. So all of this is about realigning with who you're really supposed to be. And you can do worthy work and you can get paid. Like, I'm not saying everybody has to quit their jobs. You can be paid for the worthy work that you do, but this is about not subverting your personality in exchange for a paycheck. That's domestication. That's what leads to death. Let me just drink a little bit more juice. So what does the experience of ascending feel like? Not the literal experience of floating upward in the sky, you know, like the rapture and going up to a heaven that is literally located in the clouds. It is a transformation of attention and focus, because when you make it through that wormhole, that penultimate moment, you are no longer concerned with the concerns of the world of the womb. So right now we're in this very strange in-between zone, where, you know something, you do have to keep the electric lights flowing. I have electrons flowing in a wire. I have to pay my bills. I have to do all of those things just like everybody has to do here. And I'm also highly cognizant of the fact that we are already in a magical reality and that we've already transcended a lot of the limitations of what has come before. Now we have to talk about language and what people are saying in the New Age community. They talk all the time about we're in the third dimension, but soon we're going to be in the fourth dimension. Then one day we'll be in the fifth dimension. And all of that is very sloppy language. So let me draw this out for you. What is the third dimension? The third dimension is a box. Here, wait. Go to the whiteboard. Okay. Clear out some stuff here. No, just draw it over here. The third dimension is a box. And we recognize three-dimensional objects. We are three-dimensional objects, and we live inside of three-dimensional boxes. Look at the shape of my room, guys. It's shaped exactly like a box. The fourth dimension would be a timeline or a series of boxes, a series of moments strung together. And I'm not going to draw every single box, but you understand they go to a part of my screen I can't quite connect with my pen, but the moments all connect together with the dance of your DNA. So that's a timeline starting over here and moving in this direction. And we can also say that it's like a piece of bread, French bread, a long skinny piece of French bread. The fifth dimension is the bakery where the French bread is baked. Okay? So when we talk about ourselves, even the most unenlightened person sitting on the couch eating potato chips is in the fifth dimension. They just don't know it. They are sitting in what they describe to themselves as a totally mundane, unexciting reality, not understanding that they're sitting in, to me, it looks like my dresses, you know, it looks like my fabric, a world of abstraction, a seething world of constantly changing, constantly calculating possibilities and probabilities. but they don't perceive it. They are inured to it. So they're just looking at the physical reality around them. So I'd say to everyone, you're in a physical reality, you have a third dimensional body. If you didn't inhabit the fourth dimension, you would only exist as one brief moment in time. You would not be moving through time. You'd be frozen. A frozen person. That's not moving. So everybody, even the most lumpen of the masses, is in the fourth dimension. And we're moving through time. We are fish swimming through water. And some people are consciously collapsing waveforms into experienced reality, but many people have not been up to this point. So this is what we're really talking about. The empowerment that happens when you recognize you have an inner paintbrush of your mind that each one of us is using, or like taking the raw materials of uncooked dough of the fifth dimension, and with our perception, we literally form that dough into a bread that we can experience as possible timelines. So if we, you know, from holding up the little sculpture, you say, Aurora, like, who makes those timelines? The real answer is you and I. The real answer is that there's not some external baker that makes all of these timelines, and then we have to laboriously perform the grim death march of marching down the timelines. The real answer is we make the timelines, each one of us. And the dough that we use, like our imagination raw materials, is constantly subverted up until this point. Like now we're healing things, but what's been going wrong? Because why don't we all just use our dough and bake beautiful loaves of bread and have a utopian fantasy land? The answer is there have been pathogens, parasites, that take our beautiful imagination raw materials and they subvert it and they turn it into a reality that none of us would consciously create. I say this all the time. None of us would consciously wake up in the morning and say, time to start imagining that babies are born with brain cancer. Like, no, we're not going to do that. And so clearly it is a subversion or a hijacking or a hacking of our natural proclivities to imagine reality. Because if we were truly in control of reality, we would all imagine my body is perfectly healthy and functional. Everybody's body is perfectly healthy and functional. There's no such thing as disease. Everybody has everything that they need. Everybody is able to, live a happy life and thrive. Like, that's just the baseline. And then from there, the happy, fun adventure of all the other things we can do. So something other than humanity has been taking the raw materials of our mind and creative capacity and repurposing it into what they want to create. And those are those pathogens, those pesky occupiers of the interstices. So the experience of planetary ascension means the planet herself is reclaiming her creative capacities from the invaders, the pathogens that came here. Just like when a virus comes into your body, the virus goes into the nuclei of your cells and it says, I'm a virus, listen to me, do my stuff instead of your own stuff. That's been going on our planet for like 20,000 years. Planet got a virus. And in this moment, in this generation, the planet is like, I am kicking the virus out. Like, we are drinking elderberry syrup, we are getting a super immune boost, and we are getting the viruses and the pathogens off of this planet. That is what ascension is. So ascension is not, everybody's gonna die. Ascension is not waves of fire or flood or something is going to like sanitize the planet and wipe away all the unworthy organisms that aren't supposed to be here. No, the ascension is not the Christian rapture, and it is not like, oh, the unworthy shall suffer and be smited while the worthy shall be, made comfortable and given strawberries. It's not about that at all. What ascension really is a restructuring of your physical body, where you're transforming from a hinky-jinky, non-coherent, both energy body, light body, and physical structure. You're changing the physical structure into a crystalline structure where everything is perfectly organized so that when all of this light, which is consciousness, comes through the structure, instead of vibrating it apart through disharmonics, it makes everything keep going like a perpetual motion machine. Gonna say that again. It's not like the evil are smited. The people and beings and organisms that are not well arranged, they literally cannot be subjected to these new influxes of greater amplitude of energy, louder music. They can't take the louder music on a cellular level. They cannot take it on a consciousness level. They get vibrated apart because they're not well arranged. And the beings that have done the inner work of transformation on a cellular level, on a consciousness level, on a spiritual level, on a heart level, that have done all of this work over the 17 or 18 years since 2001, and of course prior to that, those are the beings that are ready. They're like, give me the light, give me the light, give me the light, and it feels good. It actually feels uplifting. It feels euphoric. So the rising up of the literal rapture is not like flying into the sky. It is uplift in your feelings. You suddenly go from feeling like I'll make a depressed face, like I'm living on earth and I feel horribly depressed and life is horrible. And it's just to feel like, wait, things can be so much better. Wait, things are getting so much better. I'm doing this. So when I'm saying the transformation from focusing on the world that we're coming out of, the world of pure limitations. That's the world of like, I got to pay my car insurance and I got to get electrons flowing in a wire. And this is how much money I make every month. Like all of that, all of those concerns, which are worthy concerns because you have to like keep your bills, keep your stuff together. Don't just like think, oh, we're about to fly off. Calgon, take me away. We're going to fly off into the cosmos so I don't have to worry about keeping my bills together. Like you can't live like that. You have to be responsible. Just like I drink juice and I eat food, knowing that we're transitioning out of that paradigm. So that's how I run my class. I'm always like, guys, like I need to keep my electricity on. I love it when people pay me, but you could be part of the class whether or not you pay the class because we are moving out of that paradigm. We're moving out of the quid pro quo where it's like, well, I'll only give you this if you give me this, but then I want 2 of these, but then on this on another day. Now it's more just like, I just want to like make cool stuff and make sure that people have cool stuff and then make sure that I have enough food and energy and everything that I need. That's more of this way. So when you ascend, when you are in this process of ascending, your cares and concerns get refocused from the cares and concerns of mundane physical reality and the objective materialist viewpoint into the cares and concerns of an eternal body, like an eternal person that you're going to keep on moving through time and keep on being a creative, loving emanator moving through time. So your priorities change, your values change. You no longer prioritize as the highest thing. I have to sacrifice everything of who I am to make money so I can like pay my car insurance or do whatever like that. Now the priorities become different. The priority becomes, wait, I have to cultivate my body because this is the vehicle that I'm using to fly into a greater expanded level of reality. You begin to prioritize use of your own time. That's a big one because in this capitalistic society, we are taught to sell our time. I will give you 1 hour for $10. That's a horrible trade. I have to tell everyone that is a horrible trade. Your 1 hour is worth way more than $10. It's worth way more than $20, especially if it's the $10 or $20 earned by doing something that's not what you would ordinarily do. If it's like, go over there and dig a ditch, like you're like, I don't dig ditches. Like that's not my thing. That's not my gig. And they'll be like, but I will give you $10 if you dig that ditch for me. They'll be like, well, okay, that sounds kind of appealing and I need food. That's with the whole thing. It's the subversion of who you really are. So it's in the ascending process, what's happening is each one of us is reprioritizing what we consider to be valuable uses for our physical containers and valuable uses for our time and energy. And it begins to be, well, what I really value is expressing my creativity. What I really value is making interactions, like relationships with others that matter. Like not shallow, stupid things, like not just having drinking buddies, but like having real friendships, real conversations, real partnerships, even, with dogs or cats or domesticated animals, things that really matter. It can even be your garden. Like, oh yeah, I spent 5 hours today working in my garden because it's something that I really love, that really matters. You begin to work on projects and focus your energy on self-cultivation and doing projects and things that are what you feel really matters, not what society will pay you for, because those are the things that you carry with you when you do this metamorphosis. You do not take your fancy car, you do not take your fancy house. All that you take with you is your birthday suit. And literally the record of everything you've ever done is written on your body. There's no way to get away from that. So that's also why a lot of people are self-destructive, because they hate themselves because they've done things that they feel ashamed of or that they want to get rid of. They're like, I just can't wait to die and wipe the slate clean and not have to carry around that horrible burden of that thing that I did or that happened to me that I want to pretend never happened. So when you do this ascension, it's like, there's no way to hide. You can't hide. You can't be like, oh, I didn't really push that kid off the swings in the 3rd grade. Like you did that. There's no way to get past that. You can't erase it. It's written on the book of your body. So people often in this world sacrifice who they are in order to get money, and they think no one's watching. It's written on the book of your body. If you killed someone for money, oh my God, it's written, like giant red letters are written all across you about what you did in order to get that. So in the reprioritization process, what happens is you're like, no, like I don't want to sacrifice who I am and have that written permanently on my body just so I can have $1, $2, $3, $5, or $10,000. Like that's not a fair trade. That's not a good thing. And also the cares and concerns of material mundane world become very boring. Like politics and all the things that politics and the economy and the traditional pop culture and media that mostly is what people have been focusing on just become incredibly boring because those are like the events that are happening of the womb and you're being born. It's kind of like you don't need to know the weather report of the intrauterine fluid. You're like, I don't care about the amniotic fluid because I'm not going to be in the amniotic fluid anymore. I'm going to be in a new expanded level of reality. So, and I'm not saying to anyone that you can say, oh, don't worry about pollution in the ocean. That's like worrying about the polluted amniotic fluid. We're going to get born soon and everything will be great. No, that's the whole point. I care very much about the cleanliness of the ocean and the entire planet because the whole entire planet has to be restructured. Like this is what is happening. We're restructuring and rectifying everything. So it's not escapism and it's not justification for like, pollute as much as you want. We're going into the 5th dimension and everything will be so great when we have to rectify everything. That's part of our journey is rectification. So, okay, wait, let me go into all of these questions and begin to even respond because I know there's a lot going on here, and drink a little bit of water while I'm doing this too. Okay. Okay, so Pedro is back to this question about the Atlanteans. He says, but did they have quote unquote fat that needed to be shed to fit in the ascension timeline? Excellent question. So I've used that example in the past, like the undigested fat, the undigested emotional experiences, that is part of what makes us wibble wobble and not be on that central core timeline. The Atlanteans, before the invention of death, I'm just going to mute everybody, not because I don't love you, but because it comes up as feedback on the background. Before the invention of death, no, they were all lean, mean ascension machines. There was no fat. There was no extra. Like think like, these like mega marathon people. They're very slender. They don't carry anything extra. So what that really means is, it's a really excellent question. All emotional experiences were processed instantaneously. They didn't have to have like a traumatic experience that they then stored up in their body and then after many decades finally experienced healing and renewal and release about that. That was not what happened. If something happened, it was responded to and processed in that exact moment. So just, as an example, like this would never happen in Atlantis, but in this world, what often happens is you go to a party or you go to a business meeting, you meet someone says blah, blah thing. It's kind of a barb, like a little bit of an arrow, kind of sticks in you. And you kind of go home and then you think like, I don't like that guy said that to me. I should have said this and I should have said this and I should have said this. And then over many days, like you might call up your best friend and be like, this guy said this to me and I blah, blah felt this way. And then finally you let it go and it goes on. But life is so much different if you were spinning at a faster rate and you were at that party or business meeting and someone, first of all, is shooting an arrow at you. You don't have to let the arrow sink in. You could be like, oh, I take that arrow and I swish it right away. Like I ain't going to even let that come in. But if it comes into your energy field, if they say something mean to you, you can immediately respond to it. You can say, I don't like the way you're making me feel. I disagree with you for this reason. Like you get to say all those things in real time, as opposed to going home and thinking like, oh, I wish I had said this. I wish I had said this. And then having to kind of like fix things up. So everything in the time when we all had our optimum levels of chakras and energy centers moving at optimum levels, there was no need for emotional baggage. You didn't have to take time to process something. Everything was processed in the moment. Everything was much more immediate. And because there wasn't malevolence as there is now, but sometimes you step on the other musician's toes. It's not intentional. But it's like, hey, you are playing a little bit too loud. That's not cool. You get to say that it's not cool. But then also the other person does not feel horribly insulted that you're saying to them, like, you're playing the wrong notes or I want to play something different or something. Like there's a way to communicate all of that. So it's not carrying around hurts from the past and being able to be fully embedded in the present moment now. That's what the experience was like, which is very different than, so a big takeaway then is also our traumas do not define who we are. It's not like, oh, like I'm the person that skinned my knee in 3rd grade, or I'm the person that had this other person say this mean thing to me. Back then, no one chose their identity based upon their level of trauma or abuse or victimhood. But here in this time and place, many people do. And this is part of the healing that must take place, even on a genetic ancestral level, that almost every person has in their ancestral background some form of genocide, something that bad that happened to your people. And that is then in a genetic level carried on to future generations, and in a consciousness level, being like, oh yes, I remember the Armenian genocide, I remember the Black diaspora, I remember the Jewish diaspora, like whatever it is, and then feeling like your cultural identity is based upon that level of trauma or abuse or exploitation that happened. And in order to move forward without carrying that baggage, there's got to be a way to heal that and rectify it without ignoring it. Like, you don't pretend that it didn't happen, but you process it. That no one should be carrying around something from 400 years ago that was pain and trauma that's still in the genetic record now because it never got taken care of. So this generation that we're in, all of our bodies, we all have an opportunity to heal all of that trauma. I'm like looking at my DNA. I'm like, is there trauma in there? Well, I can heal it. And that basically means you rectify it. You transform it. You digest it so that it's not constantly reverberated downward. Dean says, penultimate means second place definition. Oh, I didn't know that. I thought that penultimate meant the very, very ultimate, like the peak. So that's how I've been using that word. So I'll get more education on that. Thank you very much. And I know that you wrote that to me privately, but I'm not embarrassed at all. So because like, oh my God, I'm on a foreign planet. Like, I'm still learning the language here. I don't know everything. But when I've been using the word penultimate, I've been trying to say like the peak moment of, intensity of everything that we're experiencing. Salu says they were processing their fat very efficiently. I completely agree. There was no buildup or no backlog, apparently so. I'm totally agreeing with you, Salu. You got it. You got it all the way. Pedro says you may not have askew chakras and still need to refine your ego. Yes. And I would say that level of refining your ego is like becoming a better musician. When I'm trying to be a good musician, I'm like trying to play on the beat, and like sometimes I screw it up. And when you are, doing the right work as an ego, you're like, oh, I totally made a mistake. And you can even apologize to the other musician, like, sorry, I screwed up that part. Let's re-record. Let's do it better. But you don't deny it. You don't pretend that it didn't happen. You don't blame someone else. And so that's it. Like the idea of being a perfected or a divine being. I want to say it doesn't mean that you never make a mistake, because part of the process of exploration is like you might make a little mistake. If I'm playing a song, or if I'm trying to make a new painting, or if I'm trying to make a new whatever, we have to allow ourselves to have the wiggle room, or, like some latitude to be able to explore things. Or if you're an athlete, definitely, like, you can't expect to get a basket every time you shoot the basket the first time. You can't expect that. You have to be like, I'm going to practice. I'm going to get better through practicing, or running a marathon. You got to practice to run a marathon. So each one of us as an ego, we have to be given the opportunity to, like, yeah, you might screw up a little. You might step on someone else's toes, but you're not allowed to be malevolent. I will now make the horrible music. Cover your ears. Horrible, horrible, horrible music. Intentionally horrible music. There's people that do that in this world. I literally had to learn about this. There are people who literally are like, I know that killing is wrong, I'm going to kill. I know that raping is wrong, I'm going to rape. I know that saying these things is wrong, I'm going to do it anyway. They are self-destructive to themselves. They're self-destructive to other people. They know that they're doing stuff wrong. They ain't even trying. Those are beings on a totally different level than what we're talking about, which is kind of like, how do you get many different divergent personalities, characteristics, and individuals to harmonize together to work cohesively as a whole? And that whole I'm defining is divine. It's God. It's all of these things work together to make God. And no one has to sacrifice themselves or be less who they are. And sometimes it might be like, you're a musician, you stepped on my toes, I didn't like playing with you. That's cool. Like, I will play with this guy over here instead. Like, you just work on a different song. You do your own thing. Like, sometimes that's the solution. So, there's healthy approaches. This is about having healthy approaches. And so Lewis says, true, but they had no such energy stagnancy. Yeah, so that's a really good point, Salu. It is about stagnant energy. That if you have frozen or solidified trauma from days, weeks, months, or years, or millennia ago, that's stuff that was supposed to be liberated, like compost that was supposed to be broken down for the garden, and it's still like a mass of maggots, and it's not actually decomposing yet. So you can't use it to make new plants and fertilize new ideas. That stagnancy is the stuff that's like fermentation, or like stuff that's not doing what it's supposed to do. So yeah, you want your compost heap to kind of like be hot, do its digestive thing, release all of the stuff that needs to be released, and make new fertile opportunities for new stuff. So Pedro says, good thing fasting is good for you, and you reset your immune system from the start, Aurora. That is good. I thank you for that suggestion. I have read good things about fasting. I cannot practice it myself because I do like low glycemic, like, keeping glycemic levels steady. But I know that for some people, fasting can be very effective. So I think that there's it's kind of like if you have an emotional backlog of all sorts of stuff that you have to get through, and the fat and emotions are stored in your body, when you fast, it's kind of just like, let's press pause on having new experiences. Let's deal with the stuff that we've stored up from the past, and the stuff that's stored up, sometimes it's stored up in the liver, or other major organs. And then when you do even, a short time of fasting, it helps to allow those profoundly stored experiences to come out. And when you do a pilgrimage, and let me just drink a little bit more water. So when people do a traditional pilgrimage, which would be perambulations, like around a mountain, walk 17 times around a mountain, or walk 25 miles in that direction, or any of these things, it's a lot of cardio. It's a lot of walking and walking and walking. So what ends up happening is you go through all of those emotional reserves, the deeply stored fat, the deeply stored experiences that they are stored in the fascia, like the muscle coverings. And I experienced a lot of that in this body. It came into this body as Aurora, and there were all of these stored emotional residues that I'm like, what's that from? Oh, we have to heal that. What's that from? We have to heal that. Just in order to be able to be comfortable in this body and be able to move and have the mobility that I wanted, I had to learn how to release all of these things. And it was a process that took many, many years. So understanding that helped me to understand, well, if the process of healing the human body takes many years of like releasing past emotional trauma, how long does it take to heal a whole planet? I'm pointing at that painting over there. The whole planet here has been traumatized. All of the organisms here have been traumatized. All of the humans here have been traumatized. So it made me have to be like, okay, like maybe it's not going to happen on my exact time scale of when I want the ascension moment to happen. Maybe it takes a bit of time to work through this emotional backlog in order to get rid of that baggage, in order to be free, just to be in the moment now. That's what it is. When you do that work and you relax and release, rather, if you release all the things that have been weighing you down from the past, what happens is you become free in the moment. That's what real freedom is. It means you're not defined by all the things that happened to you in the past. The guy that pushed you down on the playground, or whether you pushed someone down on the playground, like when you heal that. So I'm trying to say there are indelible marks on your soul, or the book of you. If you push someone else down on the playground, you can't pretend you didn't do that. But what you can do is you can heal from it. You can say, why did I do that? Why did I act like such a jerk? And why did I do blah, blah, blah? And why didn't I stop this? And you might even have to call up the guy that you pushed. Like, sorry, I pushed you on the playground in 3rd grade. Please forgive me. Like, these things really work. But you can also, even if they're not on Earth, or if you don't have their phone number, you can telepathically apologize to them. And you can say, I'm sorry that I harmed you. I'm sorry that I went against you, and would like to do better in the future. And all of those things are appropriate. And that does not justify in any way raping or murdering someone. You can't just telepathically apologize to someone that you've raped or murdered. But I'm talking about like on the level of minor social transgressions, because almost everyone has done it. Almost everyone has done something intentionally or inadvertently. They're like, wow, I feel ashamed that I did that. I don't want to be that person. You don't have to be defined by that experience. You can heal and rectify from it. Okay, so Dominic. Oh, and Dominic, I know I have videos we want to do a video together. We'll go over it. Thank you so much, and thank you for tuning in. Dominic says, is this why the weather is so bad? Is it slowing into entropy? Then it will be disappear, leaving it like before the flood. Weird theory. Okay, so Dominic does these interesting correlations of the chakra system to the wind and water patterns on our actual Earth right now. Like, it's really interesting work. So that is in reference to what I said about the time of Atlantis and the human genetic spinning, your dancing, and the dance movements of your DNA, how that relates to Earth's flight through time and Earth's axis, tilt or non-tilt, and how Earth is flying through interstellar space and how Earth is oriented. So yes, absolutely. Our DNA behavior is connected to storms and whirlpools and wind patterns and all of that. At the same time, we're experiencing massive amounts of technological effery, screwerage happening as a family show, so I try not to use bad words. There's all sorts of technology that is being deployed in order to harm the natural weather patterns here. So if there were no chemtrails, if there were no HARP, if there were no NexRad, if there were no geothermal plants that were, creating huge moisture plumes, like there's all of these different ways that weather is being either overtly or covertly manipulated here using technology. If none of those things existed, then what we would see is just human and, let's say, organic life and our DNA dance being exhibited in the wind and weather patterns, and then also those weather patterns affect us. So yes, our patterns of thought and feeling and what we're doing create storms or peaceful calm times, or like lots of rain or not a lot of rain, like this is when indigenous people had much more of a direct connection to the weather patterns. We need rain, we will do a rain dance, or we need this, we will ask for it from the clouds, from the water beings. Like it's a very, very different level of connectivity. So yes, it's the way it's supposed to be. Because think about this, it's a false dichotomy to be like, we're on this planet, but we're not really connected to this planet. That's the invader's mindset. That is not the natural human indigenous mindset. The indigenous mindset says, hey, this planet is my planet. It's my body. I live on it. Of course, my thoughts and feelings affect the other organisms and the larger macroscopic weather patterns here. It only makes sense. It's like saying the little cells inside of my lungs are having an impact on the whole entire body, and what they're doing makes an impact on whether I'm breathing comfortably and what my air patterns are like, or if you have like a sinus infection, it's totally blocking up your nose. That affects your inner weather patterns quite a lot. So it's correct. It's the way we're supposed to be. We're supposed to be having harmonious thoughts and feelings and dance structures, and then we send that out, and then we have harmonious weather patterns. And when we have, they're like gentle weather patterns. That means wind that is just right, gentle amounts of rain that fall, even gentle water currents. The oceans used to be very, very different in the time of Atlantis. The waters were gentle. It was not like these giant, huge crashing waves that were, that's all from disharmonics. That's all. So basically what is happening is we have disharmonics in human genome, and we have disharmonics that are going into and being expressed in the wind and weather patterns. And there's also geoengineering, which is kind of like the mental, if you have perturbations in your mind and you build a bunch of machines, and then that makes perturbations in the, it's the same thing. There are still perturbations. Okay, wait, drink more. So Dominic goes on and says, the sea and the air are directing the flow of energy in the wrong flow. When it stops, will it correct the timeline? That's what I mean. I understand. There will be a complete rectification. And so, okay, well, we got to get to this. Everyone's afraid of pole shift. They think it's going to be north-south to south-north, right? That's kind of what happened at the time of Atlantis, caused huge catastrophe. And I'm trying to tell everyone, you don't have to be afraid, because when there is pole shift, it's not going to be north-south to south-north. It's going to be inside to outside. It's going to be a bringing together of the formerly divergent realms of inner, like your inner world of mind and emotion and thoughts and feelings, and outer, materialistic world. That's how we get born from this reality. So it's not a negation of the material world. The material world still exists. What people are defining as 3D reality, it still exists. And it exists in seamless integration. Let me put down my little drink here. In seamless integration with higher dimensional reality, which would be considered pure consciousness or pure time, or the intangible patterns that I'm painting here. So our bodies are not separate from the time that we're submerged in. We become seamlessly integrated, and that becomes a very different experience, where literally we are painting the matter responds to mind, matter responds to consciousness. Literally, the world that we're finding ourselves in responds immediately to our thoughts and feelings of what we're sending out. So yeah, if you need rain, you can ask the clouds for rain. If you got too much rain, you can be like, too much rain, like turn it off, we got enough. So what I predict will happen, like loosely predict will happen, when we are healed and when our planet is healed, yes, all of the weather patterns can then return to their gentle, natural, effective ways of health. Our planet returns to health. We get rid of the virus, we get rid of the pathogens, we stop having a blocked up nose, and we can suddenly breathe clearly because we don't have all that, pathogen boogers up our nose. Sivan, good to see you, man. Sivan says, giving thanks and grateful for this wholeness tribe. I'm very happy to see you. Thank you for tuning in. Joelle has a question. She says, so the pyramids have anything to do with this, Aurora? The fake Merkaba? Ding, ding, ding. Thank you for being very perceptive, Joelle. Yes, the pyramids absolutely have something to do with it. So the Great Pyramid at Giza was actually manufactured in response to the fall of consciousness. And it was actually benevolent technology from benevolent space races that use technology. They exist, but they're kind of like a little bit, let's say, like ambivalent about having to use technology to do anything. But they're like, oh, like you use technology to screw Earth up, so now we're going to use technology to try to help Earth. So the pyramids at Giza were built after the fall of consciousness, and they emitted a benevolent penumbra rays of consciousness raising juice that helped to re-civilize the world. But so the artificial Merkaba was part of the pyramid structure. A lot of them are grown over at this point. I think some of them were in Bosnia and China. They just look like giant mountains. They don't actually look like pyramids anymore, but they're underneath all of the foliage and all the trees that have grown on there. They're pyramids. And there's another one that's at the bottom of the ocean, where we know the Bermuda Triangle is kind of like right off the coast of Florida, that whole Florida, Cuba type of area. So yeah, there was a submerged crystalline artificial pyramid that they put down there. So it's kind of like they don't quite have the music. They're not quite in tune with the entire time field. And they're so hubristic in their application of technology. They're like, we'll just make Americaba the way we want to, and we don't really care whether it fits in with the rest of the time field. Like, we'll just make our ugly music that we want to make, and we don't. It's like very infantile. It's very infantile. So then it's kind of like, okay, if you want to play with firecrackers, this is what's going to happen. But it's not very fair because it's a planet. It's not just like, oh, you're just going to blow up something inert. It's like, it's a planet. Planet's alive. Planet's alive, and the planet is big, and the planet is like, oh, no, I don't like what is going on here at all. So our ally in our personal ascension experience is the planet herself. The planet wants you to do everything you need to do in order to make this metamorphosis and ascension and begin to meld together the realm of pure mind and matter and have a different experience of reality. The planet wants you to return to a time of magic. That's it. We're talking about the time of magic. The time of magic, like, you know, the fairies, the magic stories, the time of, what would I call it? Like, you know, the King Arthur and legends, legendary time of magic. All of those legends come from this time when we used our minds to directly affect reality. And we are returning to that type of experience. But now we'll have like a lot more, we'll have more tools in our tool belt so that we won't get degraded again, is what I'm trying to say. Like, you know, you get screwed with once, and then you develop antibodies. And the antibodies that we're developing here are antibodies that are being sent out across time in many other planets, in many other places, so that they can be healed too. So it's worthy work that we're doing. Don't just be like, why do we have to go through all of this stupid crap? Like, there's a reason for it. It really is worthy, but there's a lot of suffering, and it really does suck. I'm with you on that. Dominic says the Merkaba they're making is the particle accelerator. Yes. CERN, the pattern of the sites copy from the flow of Earth energy, or are they drawing energy from the points? Both. CERN is an overt homage to the ancient Merkaba before the end of Atlantis. Some of the same scientists that were in existence then got reincarnated as scientists now. They're like, we will recreate the same horrible mistakes with the same hubristic pride, except it keeps on not working. That's what you guys need to know. CERN was all set to destabilize our planet into the point of like non-existence and just being a bunch of fragments of planet in 2015. There was a whole plan for it. And so the overt uses of CERN. Let me just drink more. I'm sorry, I get so thirsty. The overt uses are very different than the actual covert intentions. So CERN is like, oh, we're studying particles, blah, blah, this. We're learning about Higgs boson. I'm like laughing. Ha, ha, ha. No, that's not what they're really doing. What they're really doing is using it as subterfuge for creating another type of artificial Merkaba, but they're totally uninformed about how it actually works. So they're like occult. They're like tinkerers. They're like going to do trial and error, and they don't care if they destroy the planet. And so none of that is okay. So various different beings helped to avert that very real possibility of catastrophe in 2015. Let's say the planet herself, the terrestrial technosphere, myself, like with all, you know, just truthfulness, not in terms of hubristic pride, and many others worked together in order to make certain that that did not happen. So that's why we are still here. So you don't have to worry about CERN, you know, destabilizing everything, but that is absolutely the intentions, why they did it. So be strong, be affirmed, everyone, because there have been all of these plots. They're like, oh, we'll take you over with the beast system. Oh, we'll destroy things with CERN. Oh, we'll do this and that. Like, they keep on trying to do the same thing that they did many thousands of years ago, and it keeps on not working. It's like Charlie Brown and the football. They're like, we're going to hit that football this time, and then it keeps on being snatched away. So do not be concerned. Like, we keep on being given, the word is a reprieve. Reprieve. Like, nope, they ain't going to kill you. Nope, they're not going to give you a nuclear war. Nope, they're not going to do a fake flood. Nope, they're not going to do this. Nope, they're not going to firebomb you, so that we have an opportunity to do this inner transformation. So I would urge everyone, the real priority of your time every day is working on your inner transformation. It's not working on your 401k. It's not trying to get ready for retirement. Like, I'll work on my transformation in 20 years. I got to get my retirement together. Like, no, you don't have 20 years. You have to work on your inner transformation now. And the inner transformation can be, you can serve others. I'm not just talking about like doing things that would be considered selfish. Like, I will sit in meditation and I will, eschew the world. Like, no, you can do service. Like, you can cook for others. You can help others. You can clean up. You can do things that are, helping your community. But I'm not talking about subverting your true desires in order to be a part of the corporate business world. So Salu says, what about the beings who don't have access to the spirit sun? Can they just connect to their inner singularity and use the life force energy from that instead? So a really good question. When you say the beings who don't have access to the spirit sun, are you talking about pathogenic beings, like they don't run operating system love? The beings that can't run love, that don't connect with love, they had an opportunity in about 2015. I did this thing I called Reboot to Love. All right, so I'll just explain this very briefly. Okay, good. I think she's getting it. If you were an evil being on the wrong timeline, at that point you had an option, an opportunity. There was like a pathway that was created to be able to go from not running operating system love to installing OS love. And here's how I described it in like a cosmic sense. So on my Mac computer, I run the operating system that is for Mac, but you can run this program called Boot Camp, where you can partition or subdivide your hard drive, and you can make half of it run Windows and half of it run Mac OS. And that's good in case you ever want to run a program that's only for Windows. So what you have to do is you have to partition your hard drive, and then you close everything down and you reboot into Windows or whatever you want it to be in. So those beings that are running the operating system that is not based in love, we'll call it OS evil, they can do boot camp for their soul. And they can essentially partition their hard drive and say, we've never run operating system love before. We don't know how to do it. We're going to install that on half of our hard drive. Then we're going to reboot, turn everything off, turn all consciousness off, turn all consciousness back on, and reboot from this new perspective that is essentially unconditional love. And then from that perspective of embodied unconditional love, they can then dismantle their evil aspects of self, and they also have access to that. They have all of their passwords and encryption and everything like that. They can make the choice to divert their life path from the trajectory of, malevolence and evil towards self-cultivation and wanting to move towards, recognizing self-divinity, as opposed to going into entropy. They could move towards energy. That was a window of opportunity that was very limited for them. And some of them chose it and some of them did not. And at a certain point, it's like, the taxi has left, the train has left the station. You cannot get on this train anymore. So the Reboot to Love train, it's like that offer is no longer available. That node was a critical node of possibility that consciousness faced. And if you did not get on the right train at that moment, then the train has passed you by. You don't have that option anymore, but that option did exist. So Joel asks, so we were born into this world and will eventually be born into the next. That's a good way of putting it. I'm interrupting what she says. The ascension process is literally being born into the next world. And she says, is the next one a matter mother world? Excellent question. The world that we are being born into is a world that still contains matter or third dimensional material. However, that matter responds to consciousness. That is what the flying rainbow lasagna embodies or depicts. I'm just moving myself over here. Right now we're in this world where science tells us matter is just matter. A chair is a chair, a wall is a wall. It doesn't respond to your mind. But we know from quantum observership that it does. When we are born into this higher dimensional reality, we experience matter that instantaneously and profoundly responds to our mind. In terms of your body, and your body structure, in terms of the way that you relate to time, in terms of the way that molecules and atoms bond together, everything runs by new rules, what we would call magic. What happens is we begin to inhabit a magical reality. So in a magical reality, you might still have like, oh, this is still a glass, but things might behave differently. Glass might behave differently. So we begin to explore the new rules and we have expanded opportunities. Just like when you're a little baby and you're born out of the womb. You're in a new realm. You're not totally empowered, but you're much more empowered than you were when you were in the womb. Like now you can eat food, you can walk around independent of your mother, you learn to move your muscles, you learn to do stuff and be powerful in the world. Like that is we get expanded freedom. So when we ascend and we move up to that next level of reality, what I drew here, go to the whiteboard, silly thing. What I drew here in orange, when we go to that next level of reality, we get expanded opportunity. That's why I say when you fly in rainbow lasagna, you gain an additional dimension and you gain an additional degree of freedom. Gain more latitude. There's more stuff that you can do. So reality, there is still third dimensional reality. There's still matter. There's still third dimensional objects, but you are not as limited in your experience of them and your usage of them as we are in this time and place. So the rules of physics get completely transformed. We get to live in what would literally be defined as a magical reality. Just drinking some more water here. Okay, hold on a second. Let me just, I can't pour this on my electrical equipment. I have to focus. Okay. Svan says, you will to the place based on your density and light makeup, the summation of your existence. That's, I think, a very good way of putting it. That, yeah. So at this point, everybody's trained who wants to train. Some people sat on the couch, ate the potato chips. Some people did inner work and tried to transform or tried to help others or tried to become better and more of who and what they are. And at this point, you are who you are. So the people that are unbaked, that are uncooked, that are not well formed, they cannot occupy this higher dimensional reality. They are not structured to it. It's not like sinners are being punished. No, no one is being smited. It's not like that at all. They literally didn't do the work. It's like they can't pass the quiz. They didn't do their homework. They didn't know what the answers are, what they're supposed to be doing. So that's a big part of this. There's not punishment and blame, but there's taking responsibility for what you have and haven't done. So if you haven't done the work, if you sat on the couch and ate the potato chips, you cannot run the marathon. And if you're running the marathon and trying to do your best, then the cosmos will absolutely meet you halfway. Be like, hey, you need more time. Here's more time. Keep developing. Keep going. Like the cosmos is literally bending over backwards to make things more possible because we're facing so many challenges. So yeah, just no matter where you are in your development, do it. Keep going. It's good enough. Don't be like, oh no, this is going to take 17 years of self-development. Like I'm only starting now. Like it's not like you're too late. It's not like you're going to be like, oh no, I'm going to get left behind. That's, I think, a big fear that I see played out in pop culture. There's all these different shows. Literally, there's one called The Leftovers about people in America in a post-rapture event. Like half of the population got raptured on up, and then the leftovers are left behind. And they all are like, what are we supposed to do? Are we the sinners? Are we just like disposable objects? Why are we still here? So I think that there's a lot of fear that people are like, oh no, all the good people are going to get raptured. They're going to go someplace better, and they're going to be in the fifth dimension. And then I'm going to be here like working my stupid cubicle job. And I don't think that's I don't think that's a fair assessment, but it's more like this, diverging of timelines. Some people are on their peripheral timelines where they're not their true self and they've compromised themselves and they haven't gotten on to the timelines where they're doing what they're really supposed to do. Everybody has to make that choice where they're like, no, I don't want to just work at the job that, it's the job that society wants me to work at, that's relatively easy and comfortable, but it's not who I really am. Sometimes people have to quit those jobs in order to do something that's more in alignment with who they really are, but might be less practical. But you have to follow your own heart. You have to do your particular music. And I'm telling everyone, like, I don't want you to be homeless. I don't want you to quit your job and then have no money. What I do want is for everyone to work at the work that they are supposed to be doing here and be paid well for it. So part of this is a rectification of our entire reward system, like the socioeconomic matrix. People get rewarded for all the wrong stuff. We need to reward people for doing the right things. We need to reward the people that are actually making content or sharing ideas or making things or healing people in a way that actually serves themselves and others and fixes the world, as opposed to rewarding people for compromising themselves and compromising their values. Cheeky, you have a fan. Joelle loves you and says you're so special and you're an FRL. Cheeky does do the FRL with me, either sometimes sitting on my lap, but sometimes if I'm too vigorous in my dance, she sits underneath my chair. And yeah, so she definitely does the flying rainbow lasagna. And just very briefly about Cheeky and her little journey. So I adopted her almost a year ago, right? And before that, she was in a shelter. Before that, she was in a fosterage, and then before that, she was in a shelter. So that means that there was some version of Cheeky about a year ago that was in a dog, humane society shelter. And they told me when she was there that she was very afraid, that she was like hiding under a blanket, that she wouldn't come out. She had to somehow imagine a future that was a brighter future, because there are versions of Cheeky that never got adopted, that never got recognized. What happens was there was a person from the adoption agency that went around to the different shelters, got Cheeky and other dogs out too and put them into fosterages. And then I found her on an online place. That Cheeky had to feel positive. She had to be in that position and think like, something good is going to happen. Like, this is the worst moment, but something good is going to come of it. And that version of her that was able to think positively or believe differently aligned with this timeline where she got adopted by fun-loving artist and musician, and she gets to work with me in the studio every day. So I bring this up as an example of each one of us. Like, her journey is our journey. That many of us are in a crisis or a low point or having challenges or difficulty in the dog shelter, in the Humane Society, hiding under a blanket. And what happens is all dependent upon each individual personal belief. If you believe something better can happen, like something can happen. I can meet someone and go in a better direction. Someone can recognize my value. Someone can want me so I have something to give. Aligning with those feelings bring all of us to the greater timelines that are the least likely timelines. It's not very likely that a flying rainbow lasagna artist would adopt this little dog. And she was also hundreds of miles away. Like, it was all very unlikely that it would happen. But Cheeky is a master manifester. She doesn't just manifest the fried wontons that she eats on the sidewalk sometimes. She manifests having a positive relationship with, you know, a person that she lives with. So we all need to think about that. That even if we might be culturally in a very difficult spot, we have like horrible political corruption. We have profound economic iniquity. Like, we have a lot of stuff that's going on that might make you just want to hide under a blanket. Like, the world is seriously screwed up, hide under a blanket. We all need to think positively. And that's not like a zombie, stupid, hopium, new age type of thing. Literally use our minds and our imagination and our creative capacity to imagine something better can happen. A new character can be introduced to the story. A new experience can happen. A new this, and then our lives transform. That's planetary ascension. And I'm seeing each one of us, human and dog and plant and animal, transforming with that profound belief. We don't have to just settle for society being screwed up. We can actually transform and have a much better existence and then be in a cool art studio and go for long walks together. Pedro says, a heart with teeth. Good idea for a horror movie. I know, try to think of the most, that would be a very horrible disease. It seriously would. Sivan says, that's a broken heart, a heart with teeth. It happens when you split fee. Interesting, okay. Pedro says, if most people imagine the same, did things, and a few imagine a better world, does the majority win, or everyone imagines their own reality? Excellent question. Everyone imagines their own reality. There is no need for anyone to effort at controlling anyone else's behavior. That means if that guy over there is totally screwed up and he's imagining a totally screwed up reality, leave him to it. You don't have to shake him by the shoulders, slap him across the face, wake up, man, stop imagining such a screwed up reality. You don't have to, because he's making his world. He's making his painting. This is the greatest level of freedom that we experience. Each person is making their own reality. If they want to make a screwed up reality, it's like making ugly music. They can play their music, but not around you. So they might be literally in a different reality or on a different timeline, experiencing the screwed upness that they need to feel. So I knew people like that, and they are ready for the Mad Max reality. They're ready to have it be like Escape from LA. They're going to wear, like, you know, those studded collars, like a punk rock collar, and they're going to have guns, and they're going to kill people and fight people. They're ready for that. They're ready for, like, you know, a battle royale to see who can, only the strongest shall survive. And they're on those timelines. And I'm like, I do not want to, you can tell, like, I don't want to be on a Mad Max timeline. I want to be on like a lovely new dress timeline where, you know, I get to create fun new outfits and share them with people. Like, I want to make artwork and music. I don't want to be fighting for my life from barbarians. So everybody gets to experience what they need to experience for their personal ascension. And some people need violence. And I'm not judging anyone. Like, if that's what you need, go be a part of that movie, be a part of that. It's like watching movies. I'm not into those types of movies. But if you want that, you can have that. That's, I think, the real genius of the way this great composer, conductor created this experience for us. It really does allow everybody to have what they need for their own personal fulfillment, for their own personal healing, without imposing it on other people. So I get to create my world of art and music, and other people can have Mad Max if they want to have that. Gala says, so fourth D would look like a flat round circle because it is a slice of the orb of fifth D. Really great question. Okay, I would say not to be too literal. Like when I say that the fourth dimension is kind of like long, skinny French breads. They would be like my fingers. And if I lined up many, many fingers, you would end up having a flat plane, and that would be like a fifth dimensional flat, time plane. But we can't think in terms of literal, like I'm using all of these as allegories, not anything literal, because the timelines are actually all circular. So this is actually what the fourth dimension would look like, a series of timelines. Like, I draw the time vortex with the timelines. The fifth dimension would look like, imagine a lot of numbers and letters and colors just existing as like a bunch of stuff that's not organized yet. Be the possibility for this to be created out of the fifth dimension. So there are many different versions of this that are created, that are coalesced. There's, think of the fifth dimension as being like a nebula, a big giant mass of undefined gases and particles that can coalesce into a very specific embodied thing. And it can coalesce in different ways. It can do different recipes, different versions. So there are many, many, many different versions of the time field and of reality. And then when we get into the higher dimensional, like sixth dimension and higher perspective, it's seeing the different versions. Like, oh, one time, like there's a really good Simpsons episode where he gets a time machine toaster. Every time he makes a slice of toast, it changes time. And he makes a slice of toast and it like changes the reality that he's in. So what you do is you see like his house, and he makes a slice of toast as like his regular house. Then it looks like the Flintstones house. Then it looks like the SpongeBob house. Then it looks like, a completely different house. Then it looks like whatever. So that is what it's like every time we coalesce the fifth dimension into the fourth dimension. It's like making a piece of toast with the time toaster. We are transforming reality. And you can see from the higher dimensional viewpoint, oh, the house was like this, but then reality changed. Then the house was like this, and the entire reality changed. It was the Flintstones reality. Then it was an underwater reality. The entire reality changed. That is the higher dimensional viewpoint and perspective. So we are just occupying one particular possible perspective here. And we're doing the healing from this perspective, knowing that there are many other peripheral timelines that exist around us tangentially that are also transforming and being refined, and the consciousness on those timelines is also being kind of like I'm making like a focusing the lens, being refocused into its ideal version. Okay. Sivan says, question, the four-sided convex fractal, how does it differ from the six-sided flower of life grid? Okay. Do these ratios, quote unquote, allow entry into different world planets? And are these retuning of the chakra organs by archaic forces? Very good question. So long-term participants of this class recognize my little informal sculpture here. This is the negative space, meaning the complementary space to this shape over here. So here I've got, that four-lobed area, the empty areas of this space are represented by the orange shape here. This orange shape fits perfectly inside of there. And there are 8 lobes. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 5, 6, 7, 8 to make up the totality of what we've got here. The flower of life, as is presented in present levels of New Age teaching, which is why I take some issue with this, shows only, let's get this situated just right. I got it, hold it just right in front of the camera. It's a little bit fragile. Let's get it right. Boom, okay, I've kind of got it. I think you can see enough. So the flower of life as it's presented like on yoga pants and all these different little places, we just see the radial spokes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And it does not acknowledge the one that is pointing towards the camera, like the nose that is pointing towards you, and the one that I'm holding in my hand that is pointing away from you. These two represent higher dimensional planes of existence that are being edited out of the six-sided flower of life shape. So my best answer is that this is the shape of time and is the shape of higher dimensional non-physical realms that interpenetrate with our physical world. And the six-sided flower of life shape is the shape of our cellular structure when we are just looking at the cells of our body, not as it relates to higher dimensional time. And in order to relate your body effectively to the rest of this time field, what you need to do is add in the next dimensions. That then you get to properly integrate your cellular structure with the non-physical time structure. That if you're just looking at the physical cellular structure, you're only getting a slice of reality, a portion of the story, you're not getting the whole story. This ascension process, or becoming a diamond body, is all about getting the whole story, getting the multi-dimensional, the full experience. I want to say the full Monty, the full lasagna. So you're asking, are these the retuning of the chakra organs by archaic forces? The archaic forces are absolutely responsible for the wibbling wobbling of the chakras that's not actually supposed to be there, and also for presenting limited information. Chiki is playing with her little toy that we got at the thrift store back there. The limited information that's being presented. It's like we can't keep these things a secret any longer, but what we can do is just give you a little bit of the recipe. I told you the recipe for strudel. The recipe for strudel is just some water and some sugar and some apple, and you just throw it all together. That's how you do it. And that's not how you do it. It takes a lot of technique. It takes a lot more than that. So just giving people a little bit of an understanding of what the flower of life is without giving them the full recipe is actually very disempowering, because then they're like, well, I tried to make strudel, but nothing happened. I tried to ascend, but nothing happened. So yeah, we need to have the full recipe and all of the techniques involved in there in order to effectively do this transformation. Suzanne says, how could I help my blind, nonverbal child to rewrite his future? Really good, I'll get to this. She says, I tried putting those positive healing thoughts inside him and direct him how to move in the better direction. Am I enough to heal his past by taking him through it? So really lovely question. Thank you. I know that there is a pathway for your child to reach their fully, in alignment, divine timeline, because it exists for everyone. I know that there is not one person that is, around that is, too whatever, disarranged to be able to do it. Everybody has that possibility. So it's his own personal choice. And I know he might be nonverbal, but I know that there is a being that is, conscious inside of him. He has consciousness. And as long as he has consciousness, then it is his journey to go through this process of refinement and figure out, well, if I'm going in this direction in terms of time, then it's not working. I'm going to hit the membrane of death, but I can change and go in this direction, then I don't have to hit that membrane. So all of these choices, we cannot impose them upon anyone else, even though I understand you're the parent, so you feel responsible for this younger being, and also that he might be, less able than other perfectly formed people. He's perfect in his own way, but you know what I'm talking about, that you feel responsible, like you need to somehow tell him, like, hey, you need to go from here like this to this. He's got his own DNA. And he's got his own connection to, I'm pointing to the planet over here. The planet speaks through him, just like the planet speaks to all of us. So for anyone who might be developmentally disabled or not be able to hear or not be able to speak or whatever it is, there's hope. It's not like nobody gets discarded. That's a big thing. Like, no, God is not smiting anyone. God is not discarding anyone. Everybody has a chance. And this is not merely a journey of the intellect. Like anybody who might be born with developmental disabilities or intellectual disabilities, they can still ascend. It's not only like, oh, if you're smart enough, then you know how to do this. It's not just being able to understand concepts, although it's like understanding the concepts definitely helps. It's about being able to hear the music and play the right music. So I definitely know and believe on a profound level that your child has their own music that they're supposed to be playing inside, and that they can feel it. They know what's right, regardless of whether they have the intellectual capacity or the verbal capacity to talk to you or others about it. It's a felt experience. It's something that's felt from inside. So I know that they can ascend too. So that goes for anyone who's developmentally disabled or Down syndrome or anything like that. That's what I'm saying. At whatever level you are at, you have that possibility of inner refinement and transforming onto the perfect timeline level. And when a person who is diseased or whatever metamorphosizes, it might present as a profound healing. It might be that their disabilities or whatever are transcended. And so, but because we're transcending the capacity to the need for food, we're transcending the capacity to age chronologically through time. So these are other things that can definitely be transcended. And each one of us has whatever diseases or genetic proclivities that we need to transcend, to heal. So that is his particular challenge, or your child's particular challenge. I don't know if it's a boy or a girl, but it's their particular challenge. Sivan says, if I was in your situation, which technically I am as being you, I would activate my Merkaba and heal my child's Merkaba. I would use that as motivation to focus on balancing it because it must be serious and dedicated. So in balance, the situation may be equal to the passion you need to accomplish harnessing the chariot. Yeah, I would say that what you can do is you can be on your own timeline, where like, I'm going to choose a reality where my child is able to heal and transcend and become perfected and basically arranged according to the blueprint, because I really do believe that the composer wants us all to be profoundly healthy and vital and great. If there's any limitations, to transcend those limitations. So you can be on the timeline where that thing happens, where they make all of those choices and they do all of that work and they do that effort and that they successfully transcend. Pedro says, are there Leviathans in this new dimension? Good question, that we are ascending into, or do we only encounter them when we travel with the Merkaba? Good question, because you want to know about if we can be relaxed. Like, we're going to a party. Can I put my bags down? Are we going to a cool party? We're going to a cool party. Really, really good question. This party that we've been in has been a party of pathogens with genetic invaders, wibbly wobbly chakras, that has made it so that we cannot be just like totally trusting. Because we come here as little infants, as divine little consciousnesses, and we are mostly very trusting. And then little by little you learn, that's getting hurt. That guy I can't trust. That's something that's not supposed to happen. That's abuse. And you learn like, you can't trust everybody. That's it's actually a non-transferable skill, because we're supposed to be learning stuff here that we can translate to other times and places. This is a barbarian world that's full of pathogens. The things you learn here the social graces here are not necessarily appropriate to apply to other places. So please understand that when we get to this higher dimensional realm, everything is different. And you won't necessarily have to be fighting for your life or fighting for supremacy. Let me just drink a little bit more. It's what it's like where I come from, and it's why it's been difficult for me to be here in this barbarian world. And I say barbarian world, I'm not like looking down on you, but it's just the truth. Like, it's a world of competition. It's a world where people try to cut other people down. They're not cool. They try to inhibit other people in various different levels. And the world that I come from, and what it's like when we transcend these pathogenic areas of the time field, it's a world of unconditional love, where you can actually trust other people. And also you can see if something is pathogenic in this higher dimensional world where we all have our higher faculties activated, you can see it. Like, that's a big fat pathogen. I don't want to hang out with that guy. Or like, that's a demon. I don't want to talk to that guy. Like, everything is obvious. Nothing is hidden. Nothing is a secret. So yeah, navigating that world becomes much more easy and fun and comfortable, because first of all, there are, let's say, greatly decreased numbers of pathogens once you get into that level of experience. And if there are consciousnesses that are unhealthy or pathogenic, it is very obvious. You can see them, you can perceive them, and then you can take appropriate action. That what has really been difficult about being at this dance party here is everybody looks the same. You can't tell who's cool and you can't tell who's uncool, and you can't tell who's a violent, pathogenic rapist or whatever. And you have to kind of interact with people before you find out whether they're cool or not, or whether you can trust them. So then it's just like my little dog. She's lying down there with her little dog toy. She had to learn, like, can I trust you? Can I try? Are humans trustworthy? Are other dogs trustworthy? Like, it takes a lot to drop the bag and be able to do that. So yes, the dance party, it's like passing the audition. When you make it through that wormhole, you pass the audition, you are then appropriate to be functioning at that level of, telepathic connectedness. And yes, I won't say that you can completely drop your guard. You have to still be aware that there are malevolent presences in existence, but they're not in your immediate, they're not at the party. They're not at the party. You're cool at the party. Everyone who's at the party is cool. And the malevolence is somewhere else, and you can perceive it so that you don't have to constantly be protecting yourself from it. It's kind of like, if within this house, everyone who's in the house is cool. Of course, if you go to a different neighborhood, you don't know if everyone is cool, so there's questions about that. But everyone who's here passed the audition, everyone who's here is here to make beautiful music. That's what it is like. And then, of course, you get through that level and you transcend and get to the next level of refinement. And it's essentially an endless journey. It's not a torturous, grim death march endless journey. It's a fun, endless journey where you keep on learning more and more about yourself and more about divinity, more and more about everything. So on that note, let me just end the level 1 recording. This is a long recording, and get on to level 2. But thank you very much. These were all really excellent questions and really good thinking.